If you've been in the crypto space for a few months, then you've probably heard of the term decentralized finance or DeFi. But what exactly is it? What is yield farming? What's a DEX? Are these all just fancy terms made up by the cryptocurrency Illuminati to steal your hard-earned Ethereum?
It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible.
DeFi is powering the next generation of financial products and services. And in this video, we're going to go over a few examples of what exactly these things are, what DeFi is all about, and why you should be paying attention to it. Bitcoiners have a saying, fix the money, fix the world. And Bitcoin in its 12 to 13-year history has done just that, becoming a decentralized, stable, and functional monetary network that's even being adopted by some countries like El Salvador as a legal tender. But what's the next step? Fixing financial products. Mortgages, stockbrokers, loans, insurance, bonds, all things with third-party intermediaries that are often just as corruptible and flawed as the money printers themselves. Decentralized finance, or DeFi, is all about taking away those single points of failure that exist in those systems today. Like the Robin Hoods of the world that prevent you from buying a stock out of nowhere, or loan sharks that prey on the underprivileged with opaque terms of service, or just straight up incompetency in legacy financial products and services like banks. It's the year 2021, we still can't send wire transfers on the weekend. Come on. With DeFi, you can get things like loans, savings accounts, exchanges, all without having to give up your identity on a peer-to-peer basis, and anyone from across the world can participate anywhere at any time. So if there aren't companies or governments behind all of these financial products and services, who or what exactly is making them work? Smart contracts are essentially pieces of code that govern how certain applications function, all done autonomously. What keeps the legitimacy of smart contracts is that anyone can go in and verify or audit their code to ensure they are functional and fair, and no one can alter or manipulate them without drawing the attention of the network. Smart contracts are like the engines of the decentralized finance world, and you can think of these things like apps, otherwise known as dApps or dApps. These are kind of like the apps on your phone, except instead of running on your phone, they run straight out of your cryptocurrency wallet. There's a host of platforms like Ethereum and Polkadot where you can already start using these decentralized finance products, like loan platforms or exchanges, and all you really need is an internet connection and a cryptocurrency wallet. Okay, so you might be thinking, that's cool and all, but what's the actual incentive to use any of these things? Why not just stick with centralized financial services like my stockbroker or my bank account? Well, besides taking all the friction out of those things like overage fees, holding periods, transaction limits, decentralized finance allows for the creation of new ideas and function with money itself like never before. It's why some people have used the term money Legos to describe working with DeFi. And here's an example. One of the most popular uses for cryptocurrency is stablecoins, coins that hold their value on par with the US dollar and are backed by real dollars in reserves held by a third party. But how do you create a stablecoin without a central party to trust with its reserves? You back the value with another cryptocurrency. And that's exactly what MakerDAO does. Essentially, Maker allows you to lock up your Ethereum as collateral to generate DAI, which is another stablecoin that holds its value at $1 consistently. Each DAI is generated and backed by Ether that is locked up in smart contracts. For example, if one Ether is worth $2,000, you could generate $500 in DAI stablecoin by locking it up. If you want your Ethereum collateral back, simply pay back the loan. As long as Ethereum holds its value over $500, that DAI is fully backed by the collateral. And in the event that it does risk dropping under the value of the loan created, the collateral is automatically liquidated by the Maker smart contracts. So what's the use for all of this? Well, it means that you can use your cryptocurrency to generate US dollar-based loans or cash equivalents to buy things like goods and services, all without having to go to a bank or rely on a credit score to get a loan. This also means that you can use the value of your cryptocurrency without having to sell it, thus protecting you from triggering a capital gains taxable event from the disposition of your asset. Another application on DeFi is generating interest on your assets. Platforms like Compound allow you to loan out your assets through smart contracts and earn anywhere between 0.5% to 30% a year, depending on the demand for that particular asset. But unlike a savings account, you don't need an ID, you don't even need to sign up via email or anything. All you need is the keys to your cryptocurrency wallet and trust in the smart contracts that govern the platform. People have even used smart contracts in DeFi to build out full decentralized exchanges, or otherwise known as DEXs, where you can go and trade one cryptocurrency for a multitude of other cryptocurrencies. And you can do all of this without having to give up possession of your assets in the interim or get permission from a state or country to sign up. Alright, so while all of that is a pretty dense explainer of what DeFi replaces in the traditional finance world, let's talk about a few of the new things that DeFi also enables. Over the last year, a lot of platforms like Compound have popped up, which have sought to incentivize users to borrow or lend assets on their platform to improve things like liquidity for their ecosystem. Compound, for instance, paid users in a new governance token called Comp, which it gave to users as a reward for borrowing or lending on the platform. As Compound grew with more users, more people wanted to own this governance token so they could have a say in the future of Comp, thus leading to a huge demand for the Comp token and thus an increase in its price. So much, in fact, that the value of the comp that was given out as a reward was often more than the interest cost to take out a loan or the interest generated by lending out assets. In layman's terms, the reward of this comp token was so great that you actually booked a profit for taking out a loan on Compound, and thus spawned yield farming, which is basically the act of going around to these different decentralized finance platforms in search of the best yield and rewards. Since the comp token emerged, many other platforms have created their own tokens to give away to their users as a form of reward. The lending and borrowing of all of these assets is really crucial for creating functional DeFi platforms that mimic the Coinbases or the Robinhoods of the world, and here's why. In traditional finance, or when you're a stockbroker, all you see is a bid and an ask. All the buyers and bidders want things at the cheapest price possible, and all the sellers want things at the highest price possible. If nobody is willing to sell, the buyers are forced to raise their bids if they want the asset. And vice versa, the sellers have to lower their asks if they want to sell their assets. Sometimes there can be really big gaps between the bid and the ask, often known as a spread. You see this sometimes play out in the crypto or penny stock world, where you have one person who's willing to buy at 15 cents and one seller who's only willing to sell at 20 cents with nothing in the middle. Which means whoever buys at 20 cents is immediately booking a 25% loss, as the closest buyer is still back at 15 cents. To remedy this in traditional finance, they have market makers, entities that are overseen generally by stock exchanges that have both the dollars to buy something and the asset for sale, that post bids and asks in the middle of these spreads, making it more accessible for buyers and sellers. This allows for people to instantaneously buy and sell stocks or crypto or commodities without instantaneously spiking or dropping the price. In DeFi, it's a bit harder to do this, as market makers in traditional finance often operate at around 1,000 transactions per second. Decentralized blockchains like Ethereum can only handle 10 to 30 transactions per second, which on the surface makes it impossible to create and run a DeFi exchange that operates like a NASDAQ or an NYSE. To overcome this, decentralized exchanges like Uniswap or Pancake Swap have created things called liquidity pools. Essentially, these are pools of liquidity that replace market makers. If you own two sides to a market, let's just say apples and US dollars, you can put the apples and the US dollars together and lend them out into a pool. From there, automated market makers run by smart contracts use algorithms to help buyers and sellers use liquidity within the pool, always making sure that there's a balance of the two assets within the market. In simple and metaphorical terms, imagine that there's a big swimming pool and a bunch of people lined up to go swimming, but there's no water. If you own the water, you can lend out the water to the pool so that people can go splash around and have a good time. For lending out that water, you get a kickback. Every time somebody buys a ticket to go swimming in the pool, you get a little bit of that ticket sale. The more demand there is to go into the swimming pool, the higher the ticket price goes, and the more that the lenders of the water are able to receive. Now replace the word pool with decentralized exchange and water with LP tokens, which are the grouping of those two assets that we mentioned earlier for an automated market maker. That's why these LPs can pay out anywhere between 20 to 300, 400% per year in yield, because there's a lot of fees being generated based on the demand for the liquidity pool. But like lending water to a pool, there are a few risks involved. If there's too many people inside, the water overflows and spills over the edge, and some of that can be lost forever. And so in yield farming terms, in exchange for this really high interest, you do risk losing some of the funds to impermanent loss due to automated market making. So there's a lot more to all of this yield farming stuff, and I've explained it in really simple terms here. But if you want to learn more specifically about how this process works on a technical level, Binance Academy has created a ton of great resources, which I've also linked below. Due to the expensive gas fees of Ethereum, a lot of these DeFi functions like yield farming or liquidity pools have moved to Binance Smart Chain, which is a bit like an Ethereum clone run on the Binance network. It isn't quite as decentralized, but exchanges like Pancake Swap have emerged that allow you to mess around with some of these complex DeFi functions in a relatively simple to use way for much cheaper fees. One last explainer here is staking pools. These are sort of like guaranteed income certificates in the traditional finance world, where you commit to locking up funds for a duration of time in exchange for a yield return on your assets. Some blockchains use proof of stake, which is locking up assets in a contract for a specified period of time to get a kickback of rewards, as opposed to mining for them with computational power, which is what proof of work is. Staking pools take this a step further by letting you link up with other stakeholders to increase your chances of getting a reward. Similar to how in Bitcoin they have mining pools so that you have a higher chance of finding a block and thus getting rewarded with the block reward of Bitcoin. Staking is incentivized because it forces asset holders into longer-term commitments and understanding to participate in a network. If you leave a staking pool early, you're usually charged a penalty. Think of it like a high-interest savings account where you have to have your funds in there for at least 90 days to collect any interest. All right, so if you've made it this far, first of all, thanks for watching. You can put your notepad down and we can watch a cat video for a second or two to catch our breath. Like all things cutting-edge crypto, DeFi is still in its really early days. A lot of the platforms that I've probably mentioned today or terms might not even exist or be relevant a few years from now, and you risk putting in a significant amount of capital to any of these things as opposed to traditional centralized finance. But the point is this: Bitcoin has opened Pandora's box in terms of engineering a new form of money for the world. And DeFi takes this to the next level by creating new and functional ways to use our money to generate things like yield and a return on our capital. With all of these things, only time will tell to their success. But if you are considering planning and participating in DeFi applications, I'd recommend, first of all, not putting in a significant amount of capital, but also doing your research and understanding how smart contracts work, understanding code itself. And if you can't understand the code, get a community and a solid resource for analyzing and auditing some of these smart contract platforms so you know what you're getting into in the first place. Tons of these smart contract DeFi platforms have had funds drained and their code exploited. And while many have been patched up quickly and often funds returned by white hat hackers, the security of any of these things is really suspect. Much in the way that the early days of Bitcoin were notorious for having these centralized platforms that were vulnerable to hacks, now replaced with institutional grade custodians, DeFi has a lot of work ahead of it to make it a secure place to put money into. But there's no doubt in my mind that these decentralized platforms will eventually compete with the centralized ones, with the ethos of Bitcoin and what made that so great living on through their tenets: transparency, immutability, and full accessibility to anyone, anywhere. All right, that's the video. Thank you for watching. It's a lot to take in. There's a lot more to DeFi that I couldn't cram into this 15-20 minute video. But if you enjoyed it, if you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. I'd be happy to answer any of them. There's a lot of different DeFi platforms people might have questions about, and I know quite a bit about each individual one, but I'm not gonna make a video about each one. But if you do have any questions, send them down below and I'd be happy to answer them. And of course, if you liked this video, you learned something today, make sure that you're subscribed to the Kinetic Finance channel down below, as we try and put out a video like this every single week. And give a like and a thumbs up, as it also helps this video reach out to more people on YouTube's algorithm. Thanks so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.